Okay. We will call the meeting to order. This is the time and the place for the February 17, 2025 regular board meeting of the Marshtown Community School District Board of Education. Welcome to all of you joining us here in person this evening. Welcome as well to anybody who might be tuning in or watching via the live stream. A couple of announcements before we get going. We've got a pink sign-up sheet there on the speaker's table for anybody who wants to address the board during public comment time. You will be given 5 minutes to speak. Please understand that Iowa law prohibits the discussion of specific employees of the district or their job performance. Also, in accordance with board policy, board members will not respond to comments so that we can comply with open meeting laws. We'll do introductions of the board members here tonight. Starting to my left, we have Maria Morales and Leah Stanley. To my right, Sarah Faltis. Dr. Theron Schutte is seated right next to me here at the speaker's table. He's our superintendent of schools. And to my right is Mr. Randy Denham, our board secretary. I'm Sean Heitman, the board president. We've got 3 of our student school board members here to start this evening: Lege Paw, Charles Gilbertson, and Xander Stupp. Did I get all the announcements, Randy? Yeah. Okay. With those things done, would you all please join me in reading the mission statement of the Marshalltown Community School District? We develop learners who have the positive skills and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And please stand as you're able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
There are not.
Then is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Faltis Morales, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Abby?
So I want to introduce you all to Owen Eaton, who was recently named a finalist for the National Merit Scholarship. He was selected based on testing scores, academic record, extracurricular achievements, and other accomplishments. And then the winners of National Merit Scholarship will be announced later this spring. He's here tonight to kind of talk about the process he went through and kind of about his high school career. So, Owen?
So the basis of the scholarship, on the PSAT, pre-SAT, it was a test given my junior year of high school, and I just found out in August. You'd think there'd be a way to speed it up, but not going to question it too much. And I placed in the top 1% of the state, which put me into a group of 15,000 testers out of 1.5 million. And it allowed me to get offered a full tuition scholarship to Iowa State. So that's where I'll be continuing my education. And the staff at Marshtown, I know many of my past teachers have encouraged this learning, and it's really helped me on my career. It's helped me study for this. When I first came into the Marshtown schools, it was iffy on whether I wanted to really apply myself or not, but the staff I was around pushed me a lot, and it's amazing. Right now I'm at MHS. I'm an MHS senior, but the dual credit program lets me take all of my classes at MCC, and I'll be graduating this May with 4 associate's degrees, 1 in physics, 1 in engineering, 1 in math, and 1 in liberal arts, in hopes of going on to Iowa State to major in physics and mechanical engineering. So that's pretty much the basis of it.
Wow.
I'm not a public speaker if you can't tell.
That's an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations.
Yeah, very good, Owen.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
We're all proud of you.
I think that's it.
Thank you.
That's it, right, Abby? Just Owen?
Yep.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. We've got minutes from the January 29 special board meeting and from the February 3rd regular board meeting. Any items of note in personnel, Jackie or Dr. Schutte?
We do. Eric Goslinga, who's in attendance tonight, our current principal at Marshtown Learning Academy and the Marshtown Virtual Academy, has announced his intention to retire at the conclusion of the 2024-2025 school year after devoting 35 years of his life to public education. Eric started off in HLV, Hardwick, Ladora, and Victor as a business education marketing instructor, and then matriculated to assistant principal and activities director. He was activities director for a few years at Grinnell Newburgh School District before Marshtown Schools nabbed him as an associate principal in 1999, where he stayed at the high school till 2008. In 2008, he embarked on developing and leading our alternative high school MLA. He also pioneered our first virtual school. It goes without saying that Eric has served our district well during his tenure, taking the initiative as a very successful grant writer. He's received 2 STEM Best grants in the time that I've been here. He's also served as our district's homeless liaison, our at-risk coordinator, and has provided leadership and oversight to many of our students through the Sea Cadet and now Marine Cadet programs. I've always enjoyed talking to Eric, as he's a very forward-thinking leader with a deep passion for authentic learning, project-based learning, problem-based learning, and work-based learning. All of the things that we spoke about earlier today with the high school, with the JA3DE program. These are all teaching and learning methodologies that are highly supported as evidence-based. So Eric, thank you for your admirable service, and we hope you have a great remainder of the school year.
Is this on?
Yep.
Todd Kluver began his teaching career 31 years ago in Houston, Texas. It didn't take him long to realize that he needed to return to Iowa, where he was born and raised. He found his way to Marshalltown, an easy drive to his hometown of Ankeny, Iowa, where he continued his career as a PE teacher and coach. Todd has been loyal to the Marshalltown Community School District in teaching and coaching throughout his tenure at both Marshalltown High School and Miller Middle School. Todd and his lovely wife, Shelley, have raised 3 boys. The 2 oldest are proud Marshalltown graduates, and the youngest followed in his father's footsteps, graduating from Ankeny. Todd has lived through a lot of changes in the world of PE, but he has remained true to his coaching roots of always trying to get the best out of his students and players. We wish Todd nothing but the best in his well-earned retirement and look forward to following his continuing coaching career. And thank you, Mr. Glenn, for those statements.
Thank you, Jackie. Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, there's an agreement with Northwest Missouri State University for school counseling field experience, an Elevation 1-year subscription for data management and in-person training service, Braun Intertech corporate proposal to complete a geotechnical evaluation at Miller Middle School, a renewal agreement with All American Publishing to produce T-shirts for Marshalltown High School and sell advertisement to community supporters, a data sharing agreement with Flashlight Learning, proposal from Tree Green commercial for lawn care for the school district, a school specialty quote for 8 additional pieces of furniture at MHS. I assume that's related to the CTE.
Yes.
And a memorandum of agreement with Marshall County Emergency Management and the Board of Health regarding use of school district facilities in a disaster or emergency. Questions about any of those agreements or contracts? There's also a special ed agreement with East Marshall School District for 29 students. Is my math right, Randy? Looking at open enrollments for the current school year, there are 3 out and 2 in. And for the upcoming school year, 1 in and 2 out. Randy, any items to note in bills or the monthly financials?
I will point out on the financial statements this month, on the monthly fund summary, you may see a negative ending balance in the capital projects fund. There's no reason for alarm there. That's costs we've incurred so far related to the Franklin Field project. And as you are aware, we haven't issued the bonds for those projects yet. So it's just a timing issue at this point that'll catch up once we have those bond funds issued.
Any questions for Randy about the financials or the bills? And we've got some obsolete equipment. The baseball stadium lights and the technology department would like to dispose of 305 Acer Chromebooks. Do you want to say anything about the lights there?
Just that our intention will be to donate the lights to the Little League for them to repurpose those.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Faltus Stanley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. And we had someone signed up on the public comment. Marco?
Yeah.
Come on up.
Any mic?
Either one.
Okay, cool.
You start talking, and then I start the timer.
Okay, cool. I won't take that long. So, my name is Marco Yepes Gomez from 11 North 6th Street. I'm pretty engaged in the city council meetings for especially like the last 5-6 months. And McFarland, they've been really pushing for kind of like zoning changes to get solar panels in the property. And I was just kind of like reading up on our, school district, and I think a few years ago we tried to do solar panels as well over there by
Bicentennial Park.
yeah, somewhere like that. It kind of failed. I think it was residents complaining with it. But yeah, I think at that time there weren't any zoning laws or ordinance to prevent that. Now, I think what has happened is public institutions are allowed with special permits. And I realized the high school northeast, there's like a large soccer field. And like, I think in Google Maps, it has it down as 5 acres. Plenty of room for grounded solar panels. McFarland's, I think they're saying they're going to save $200,000 a year just by putting solar panels themselves. So I don't know. It's just something to think about. Just came here just to kind of spread that word. They're not done. I think tomorrow they have like a zoning commission meeting. And I'm sure there's still maybe a few roadblocks, but I don't know, something to keep in mind and keep track. But yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Letters. Who's here? Erica, there you are. I didn't see you.
Okay, hi everybody. We are here to give you an update on the letters training that is happening across the state. You can go to the next slide. presenters tonight are myself, Erica Finders, and then we have Sarah Nichols, who is a first grade teacher at Hoagland, and she's taking the letters course. You'll learn more about the differences here in a minute. Sarah Holland is a Title I teacher at Hoagland, also taking letters. Liz Jergensen is the associate principal at Linehan and is taking letters for administrators. And Laura Gustafson is a special ed teacher at Anson, taking letters. And I am taking letters for administrators and just finished letters for early childhood educators. So we can go to the next slide. So a quick little timeline here of this these letters courses that are being provided by the Iowa Department of Education. They started offering this training free of charge, and it's a pretty hefty feed training, so we thought, why don't we take advantage of that? So in November, they announced that. In March, the first cohorts began their courses, and then they continued to offer more rounds of registration. So there's 5 different rounds happening right now, so kind of different rotations of people working through the course. So March through the last cohort will finish in January of 2027. Participants do reading, online coursework, attend live Zoom sessions, and complete bridge to practice activities in their classrooms related to what they're learning. The courses will be wrapping up between this January and January of 2027. At that point, participants will turn in completion certificates to the HR office, and then the final step here is that participants will sign a 3-year commitment to MCSD and receive a stipend for their work in whatever letters course they worked through. So there are 3 different courses, as you heard across the representatives here. There's letters, which is the original course designed for teachers, focused on the science of reading and best practices in reading instruction. This is not a curriculum. It's really how do children learn how to read, and what are the best ways to teach them that. So we have letters. We have letters for early childhood educators, which is focused mostly on preschool and kindergarten learners, and then letters for administrators has some of the components of letters, but also systems thinking as well. So letters is the first one we're going to talk about. That there's a description up there of what this course is about. It takes 2 years to complete it. We have 44 MCSD participants in 3 different groups working through that. They've received 2 print manuals. There's online coursework, live professional learning sessions, and then those bridge to practice activities where they get to experiment in their classrooms. So who wants to start and explain what you've gained thus far?
I can begin. It's not a lot of new learning. I would say it's some tweaking for me with having the literacy teacher endorsement and having that background. We've had a lot of great training in Marshalltown, but I have added certain things to what I am doing that have helped students. The Zooms are a great opportunity to ask the experts, the letters trainers, personalized questions. Most of the trainers will offer to stay on, and I've been able to ask specific questions about how to help students. Some of our most struggling students, we know we're doing what is best practice, and maybe some still struggle. And so I've implemented, especially some of the using manipulatives with the phonemic awareness activities. So like I brought some counters and things that we're already doing, but just giving some of those younger students like a manipulative touch, tell me the sounds in sock, sock, and then they can just have something more to touch. So that is one thing that I implemented. Also, another thing was students who are really struggling, just another step with the materials that we already have is the skill of the week that we're working on. It might be short A, short E, having, when we get to our phrases and sentences, having them highlight the word with me, and we're reading it together. Then we go back through, read it another time, and then I would release them to independent practice. So just really another level to help them with that fluency. I'm very comfortable when we do our small group sessions within our Zooms, being a leader. And not all the instructors from around the state maybe have had that background and that instruction that we've had. So yeah, I've really enjoyed the opportunity. Thank you.
Excuse me, like Sarah said, it's been a lot of good fine tuning of the literacy knowledge we already have. And something that's been really neat is really diving into the English language and pointing out how deep and complex English is. And then that's really especially good to know with our English language learners. So then I can really point out, here's how we do it in English, or here's why it's this way in English. Like, for example, no word in English can end in a V, which I didn't know. Everything has to end in a VE. So like the word have is actually not a tricky word. That's how you have to spell it, because in English nothing can end with a V. So just a lot of things like I can point out to my students. And also we've been working like a lot, my last unit was a lot on suffixes and endings. And I remember teaching my first graders, we get a list of all words that end in ED. And I would just be like, guys, all these words end in ED. Come on, how can you not learn this? But how that little ED ending is a morphological part. It has its own meaning. And so I have to teach my students that you have to put jump first, and then you can add ED. It's not just putting that ED. Anyway, like just the level, the deepness of it, and then being able to explain that to the kids. And even at a first grade level, they're able to, not completely, like independently probably teach it back to you, but it's amazing now they pointed, oh, look, there's an ED, Mrs. Nichols. Like that means it happens in the past. And even though we hear it, I'm not going to spell it with a T because it's an ED ending. So just my depth of knowledge has deepened, and then I can share that with the students, and they can go deeper in their knowledge as well.
I'm Laura. I'm the special ed teacher at Yanson. And one thing that I've really enjoyed is having the option of the hands-on experience with the Zoom sessions. So they give you lots of different times that you can go to the workshops. And so you can pick during the week. I choose, just with my busy schedule, a full day Saturday. So you do 2 sessions for each unit. You spend a whole day hands-on activities. The last one we did was a hands-on, like manipulative, like things that we can do in the classroom and very quick. Okay, I know my student is struggling in this area. I can apply this hands-on activity. So it's a lot of things we already have in place with our curriculums, with really great reading or UFly, and then we're just bringing it all together. And then being at the special ed standpoint, I'm seeing the progression of the reading that my littles can eventually get to at some point.
Okay. All right. The next course that we were offered was Letters for Early Childhood Educators. You're good. Perfect. Thank you. This one is a little bit more abbreviated. It is focused on preschool and kindergarten mostly. So this was just a 1-year course timeline. This is a little bit quicker. We had 7 participants in 2 different cohorts. 5 of those people have completed that, and then 2 are working in a later cohort. That included all the same kind of things: print manual, online, Zoom sessions. One of the things that I really appreciated about this training for myself is that several instructional coaches also took this training, and we were able to incorporate a lot of what we learned into professional learning that we were providing for our preschool teachers. So we have 2 preschool teachers who did this course, but 6 who did not. And so it's been really nice for us to be able to bring that back in to the professional development sessions with them and ask them to, we do a little bit of review of the content, and then we ask them to apply it in their classroom. And we were able to, one of those sessions was on the importance of building oral language in students as the foundation for learning to read. And so we got to include our ELL teachers who support that and all the paraeducators who support preschool as well, and they got to participate in that same learning. So that's been a great benefit of this early childhood course. And then the third course is administrators, and Liz is going to talk about that one. We have 13 people participating in this, a mixture of principals and instructional coaches. This is a 2-year timeline, so it's longer like the letters courses, and has those same components. The tweak here is that there's a focus on systems as well. and leading. And I think you have a slide.
I do. Yep. So one of the things is kind of the takeaways from my learning is kind of understanding the how and the why behind the evidence-based reading instruction. So, and the training has emphasized, decision-making, data-driven decision-making, choices in looking at addressing the reading gaps, emphasizes, and what the gals were talking about as well, is that requires a systematic, explicit approach to teaching, and how students acquire reading skills. And how has kind of this impacted my work with teachers? It really is intentional to make sure that that teachers are using evidence-based strategies in a method to close the achievement gap, and looking at how very important is emphasizing errorless learning in the systematic instruction. And kind of the impact for our district looks at, I think we need to look at targeting professional development, using and assigning those instructional strategies. As we were talking before the board meeting started, is just how very specific this training is and how very important it is, and not just for, the 44 people or, sorry, Sean, I can't do the math like you can, but, the people that are involved with this training of how do we make it more consistent that everyone is receiving this quality opportunity. And then looking at, as Erica said, it's really just a mind shift about reading instruction. So it's not another professional development, but it's just understanding how we are transforming the way that we teach reading to our students. So pretty powerful in the process. So, and is it new? In some cases, no. I get the bird's eye view, and these gals get the nitty-gritty part of the teaching of the reading. Mm-hmm.
Any questions for us?
I don't have any questions, but thank you all for taking the time to go through and do this new learning and taking time out of your personal time, your Saturdays and other things, to try to provide that enhanced education for our students here. So thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have Emily Banks here with me. She's our preschool coordinator, and she has some excellent news to share with you around the C4 grant that we have been awarded here at Marshalltown.
Yep. So part of my role is I teach classes at the high school that are dual credit with MCC. And several years ago, we were able to start classes toward a CDA, and I've had 2 students complete it, and then they're both student teaching right now. One will be student teaching at Hoagland, and then one is at Lenahan. So that's exciting to see them come like full circle. But this grant is an opportunity for us to partner with local child care programs. And will you switch to the PowerPoint? So this grant is through the Department of Education, and it was looking at ways the Department of Ed could support child care programs in communities. So what the students will do is, the ones that are already enrolled in my early childhood courses will also be doing some Texas Tech curriculum that we receive for free. And it's over 3 to 4 semesters depending on when they start the program. In my classroom, the ones that have started this year, they'll complete all the mandatory trainings that are required for child care programs, which is around 30 hours. We'll also work with Mickey England to do their CPR and first aid certification. And then through the course of this, they need to acquire 420 hours. And in the past, it was maybe working like after school or maybe volunteering. This grant allows us to pay them. So it's very exciting. So once they've completed all of this, they have to take a pretty hefty exam, present a portfolio, and then be observed by an outside person through the CDA, which is the Child Development Associate Council. So it worked really nice to form partnerships with 2 community programs that we already partner with for preschool. So Bobcat Academy and St. Francis Childcare are going to work with us. Students can work before or after school in their open blocks, and they've agreed to let them work in the summer. The students are actually going to be employees of these programs, and then the grant allows these programs to then bill us for their wages, and then they'll get reimbursed. So it's really beneficial to them to get some young workers in there and then get that money back. So the funding, we receive $74,200, and it covers student salaries, training and material fees, textbooks, stipends for teachers. We really wanted to pair the students. We want to pair the students with veteran childcare providers that want to be there teaching them, and that Randy, I'm looking at you. It's a 3 semester, so I think we have to have it all spent by July 2026, I believe. So recruiting, this semester I have 5 students. They started with me last fall before we even knew this was an option. So during conference week, I'll be meeting with their parents so that the parents kind of understand the commitment. Transportation can be an issue. Bobcat's walkable from the high school if it's not super cold or really rainy. So we'll work through some transportation things. One of the students I have this year is a senior, and he's already been working at Bobcat. So I'm really hopeful we can get him through with everything and he can still finish. And then the other 4, as far as I know, will be able to finish next year. My goal is to have 10 new juniors or seniors start in the fall. So I'll be meeting with counselors. I've already been in to present to child development classes. And then Adam Van Arkel helped pull a Zello report for students who had identified interest in working with kids. And we're going to pull them into an ENR at the high school in the next week so they know what's coming. Registration is pretty much wrapped up at the end of this week. So students still can make schedule changes. I've checked with the counselors. So I'll work with the kids to make sure that if they want to be in these classes, that they have that opportunity. I also really work with the kids on these courses can be transferred for electives. So let's say they take these 23 credits and they decide they want to be a nurse or a different field, psychology, whatever. A lot of colleges will accept them as elective transfers. So we work through advocating through that process. And then usually their practicum hours, they'll count as well. So I'm excited that there's money behind something to kind of beef up what we've already been doing.
How many students does that funding support?
Well, ideally, it will support the 15.
15?
Is my hope, maybe more. The tricky part will be if we run out of money and they still have hours to go. If they're good employees, I would think the child care programs would still keep them on. Or if I have a senior start next year that's not able to finish everything, then that summer after they graduate, the child care program could support them to finish. They just would be absorbing that cost. So the goal is to have highly skilled child care workforce.
I think we are one of 6 districts that were awarded. Is that
Yep,
right?
this was the 3rd round, but we're one of 6, and so I've already been in contact with a couple of Northwest Iowa schools just to kind of talk through how it works with them.
I thought it was 9. You were right. No, Emily's done an excellent job. She put all the hard work into applying for this grant. Super proud of her for the leadership she's taken on. And we've really seen a lot of our high school students step up into big roles. And I think this is just another example of some really cool partnerships. Always great to work with Bobcat Academy and St. Francis. They're close preschool partners, and this is another way that we can continue to help our future students thrive.
Any other questions?
Is there a limit of what grade they could be in? I'm sorry if I missed it.
No, it's okay. Probably starting as a junior. They have to be 16 to work in the child care program. So even if they were turning 16 second semester, we could get all the trainings done first semester, and then they could start. So I really talked to sophomores and juniors for next year, but kind of depending on that birthday.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chad?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Then we do need a motion to approve the C4 grant in the amount of $74,200.17.
So moved.
Second.
Faltis? No, the other way around.
Stanley
Stanley
Faltis,
Faltis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Mr. Goslinga, now you mentioned HLV when you were talking about him. You didn't mention that he was my business teacher in high school.
Oh, forgot that.
Business law teacher.
Yeah. So there you go. The rest is history.
Wow.
I launched a career. Which I can take no credit for. But. Yeah, good evening. Here for the annual update about Marshalltown Learning Academy. It was really great to have 4 board members for the visit last week. That was really nice. So I'm going to go real fast tonight because I got not a lot of time and a lot of slides. MLA is we like to call it the non-conventional learning program for students in grades 9 through 12. For those on the tour, you notice that it was a pretty highly personalized environment with a lot of student voice and choice kind of shining through as to how kids achieved mastery of the standards in our curriculum. So you get a sense of the staffing there. So big rocks have stayed pretty consistent over time. Relevant core instruction at grade level. It's really important that we, from a lot of training that we get, that the instruction that we give him is at grade level. We can scaffold the grade level if we have to, but we need to make sure that we're teaching the standards at grade level and not undercutting those standards. Authentic learning experiences with project management training. Student agency is valued. That's that voice and choice picture. We did this year set a building record for the number of individual college dual credit transition registrations we had, so we're proud of that. And then our general supports for learning. So when you're in alternative education, it's really important that you not just duplicate the experience from a traditional school, otherwise there's really no reason to exist. We also know that many of the students that come to us have not found enough success in traditional education that just running them through that again would not necessarily be good practice. So we do push our staff and coach our staff and train our staff to be philosophically and pedagogically aligned to project-based learning and personalized learning. There's a lot of research about that for at-risk kids, and the authentic learning makes it relevant and then gives them more of a reason to care and ignite some passion around that. Some of you saw our hydroponic vertical farming continues to grow. Last week when you were there, the tomatoes were not ripe, but last night when I added that picture to the slide, the tomatoes were ripe. So I took a little snapshot of that. The kids have been working on growing different things in our hydroponic units and also understanding what works in there and what doesn't work in there. We grew wonderful pumpkin plants last year, but we couldn't get them to flower and pollinate for some reason. So we grew wonderful vines and no pumpkins. So we've kind of moved away from pumpkins for now, but mini cucumbers are really exploding. The lettuce has been very good, and now we're on our first batch of mini tomatoes. Last year we had some bok choy as well that we grew, so pretty successfully. That initiative is linked to 6 programs at Iowa Valley Community College that are last dollar scholarship programs. So there's relevant pathways in our community for kids to do that. Authentic learning embedded in tech math. Our math teacher has done a wonderful job of doing some hands-on things for kids to make measuring, cutting, really relevant for kids. And this is a project, I believe these are the shelves that they built for the language arts classroom. We had a need for some shelves. And so kids learned a lot of math principles while they were doing this work. So the actual construction took a long time because we were doing a lot of math alongside that. But it ended up to be very relevant for students. You'll see another picture of kids. I think that's another set of shelves there with, it's interesting that all of the students that chose this hands-on approach and did all this construction were all female, which was kind of unique, but that was really cool. We have some other students. I think you saw some of the carts and some of the physics principles that were applied. We do integrate engineering principles into our math courses as well. So new initiative this year. Some of the people on the tour walked into the classroom when this was going on. We are doing a Southwest Airlines professional communications certification with the redesign of the state report card. Industry credentials, college classes, things like that are really going to ring the bell on that state report card. And this is an industry credential that validates the knowledge and skills to communicate effectively in the workplace. So it really focuses on a lot of those soft skills and things, but students with this certification are more qualified, prepared to enter the work environment regardless of industry. And Southwest Airlines puts this out there for people to use. And a company called ICEV that we partner with for a bunch of courseware then provides the certification exam. So we have students that should be taking certification exams here, hopefully after spring break, and we're excited to see how many kids actually pass and earn the credential. Little quiz there for anybody who, this is some authentic learning and hands-on things that happened in science, but what you're looking at there is a bar of ivory soap. And we are demonstrating Charles' Law for students. And you pick a, I don't know, in the don't do this at home category, you put ivory soap in the microwave and you heat it up. When ivory soap is manufactured, apparently some gases and air are whipped into the product. Well, as the temperature rises, that all of that has to go somewhere, and it teaches kids that as heat increases, the volume increases, and they get all those relationships kind of figured out. But that's one of those things that we do. We have kids pretty active in the community. We are continuing this. These are a couple of students who are putting boxes together around Christmas time. I believe this was at the Salvation Army for family boxes and family food boxes. Since the last time I presented, we have students that do volunteer to play chess with Lenahan students. So we send some high character kids over to do some chess stuff. That's Dante Wells there with the yellow sticker on. He just graduated a few weeks ago, and he earned his CDL through our program. So he has his commercial driver's license, which was one of his goals. There's Talon playing chess with some Lenahan students as well. So the transition and career supports that we're offering for kids, we do partner very closely with Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation. Melissa Mulder comes to our building. We have special education work experience services that the district contracts for. We get a piece of that time. The IJAG program is pretty important to work-based learning at MLA, and it's important that we would really, advocate to maintain that as long as we can. It's been helpful for a lot of the career exploration stuff that we do. We do link kids to apprenticeships. We do Job Corps tours. We have dual credit opportunities with MCC. We take kids to a bunch of MCC open houses, and the school counseling services that Mary Edel provides are pretty focused on the college and career readiness pieces. So just some slides from some of our career exploration stuff. We have some welding going on, and we have somebody doing a VR activity there. Not sure which even that one was even from. We do participate in the apprenticeship with the Bricklayers Apprentice group here in town, over on 12th. And some of our kids that were interested in the utility field got to go up in the air in the bucket. I guess it's kind of like, from what I understand, they're doing that now, sort of like if you're going into nursing, you take the CNA course first, because if you can't handle blood, there's no reason to go any further. And I guess in the utility field, if you can't handle being in the bucket, no reason to go any further. So that was part of the experience that day. I believe this was at Capri and Cedar Rapids. We have some students interested in the cosmetology field and some talented artists there too that were doing a series of things there at Capri. We have 38 different course registrations for dual credit amongst MLA students this semester. That's the most we've ever had. I'd credit Mary Edel being in the building part-time as really somebody that's helped to move that forward. We have a large number of SEL, social emotional learning supports. We continue to work with the collaborative problem-solving focus that's happening at the district level. We have small social emotional groups. We have Focus on Me, which is a girls group from juvenile court. CAPS comes in twice a year and does healthy relationships groups. We have life skills, violence prevention groups. That's generally a boys group. And sexual assault awareness, domestic abuse. Folks do come to MLA, and we do use our book clubs, which is a way to address social emotional issues while addressing and meeting actually language arts standards at the same time. And our language arts teacher, Katie Mummert, has been invited to participate at a regional conference to talk about our book club initiative. So supports for learning. So there's students meeting with a college advisor up at Marshalltown High School. Marshalltown High School has been a great partner for us and loops us in on their stuff, which is greatly appreciated. Jackie Ellenbecker is pictured there from Juvenile Court Services, facilitating one of our, I believe that's a Focus on Me group with a variety of students in there. We launched a new recognition program this year that's been pretty successful. We are celebrating credit acquisition, improved attendance, student growth, and just good school citizenship. And here's a group of students. I believe these were December kids, and they get a small, nominal, like a little gift bag with a couple little things in it, typically. But they like the certificates. This is a great group of kids here. I think we are on target to get all of those graduated and out the door, so I'm super proud of them. Still more recognitions. The student on the left, Trent, has graduated this year. And more recognitions yet. So we recognize kids for a variety of things. Still to come this year, we are doing another Agile Scrum project management training for students. I think we're going to try the Orpheum Black Box this year. Shauna suggested that. I thought that was pretty good. More career exploration opportunities, mostly through our IJAG program. We are there's a discount at the state level to get kids first aid, CPR, and AED trained and certified. I believe it's $5 a student, so we can then send kids out with a credential as they go apply for jobs and get into the workplace. And we'll do another UAV construction experience, another STEM personalized learning experience before the end of the year. So overall goal, our biggest challenge remains helping kids find purpose and meaning in education. And we want all students to graduate at MLA, but we also want them to leave with a plan. Turning them loose without a plan is really no plan at all. So they've got something in their pocket going for them that they know what they're doing and they know what their next steps are. So, any questions this time?
Well, I don't have any questions. I just, I enjoyed getting a tour and see what's going on down there, over there, however you want to describe it. Yeah, and just seeing the opportunities that kids have, and the way learning is in a lot of ways really, really student-centered at MLA, I think is really neat to see, so.
Yeah, the
Thanks.
different seminars was a new concept to me this time visiting. I know that like language arts had done kind of some seminars before, but that's expanded. And that seems to be working really well so some students have that really accelerated short time period where this is kind of the only class you're working on versus students who are in slightly more traditional length of time for classes, right?
Yeah, we found that really compacting the time frame, but intensifying the experience. So 60 to 75 minutes a day for several weeks to earn that semester credit has worked well for some kids. And it's also part of offering that variety of experiences. We always intended to be a blended learning program. So we do have some kids that like to work online, but they also need those collaborative kinds of experiences. And that's something we thought when we looked at our data 4 or 5 years ago. We thought we were missing what we used to call 5 on the old instructional practices inventory, kids getting together and collaborating together in their learning. And we had a lot of higher order thinking stuff going on, but not a lot of collaboration. So we've added that piece to try to build collaboration.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're up, kids. They are kids. Well, some of them might be almost 18. Maybe they are 18. Who's 18? Okay, well, adults, come on up.
Good evening, school board members.
Starting off tonight, we're going to talk about the boys swim team. Over the weekend, they competed in Iowa City for state. The boys did well. Most of them maintained their time, their seat time. Along with that, Coach Lupi was also recognized, my apologies, for 35 years of coaching. And then looking back at districts, which was a week before state, Coach Lupi and Coach Delaney got recognized as district coaches of the year. Yeah, that's it for the boys.
Did I read, Charlie, that you actually reduced your time a little bit more?
Yes.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the same time state swim was going on, district's wrestling was going on. So here at our district, at the Roundhouse, 4 of our wrestlers qualified for state. Xavier, Nick, Kobe, and Johan. They all qualified. I believe Xavier also was district champ for his weight class, while everyone else was either runner-up or third, and that's how they qualified. State will begin next Wednesday, and hopefully they'll wrestle till Saturday and maybe get a state championship. So we're looking forward to see all the good things they'll do next week at the Wells. Oh yeah, and then also recently, Artes Latinas were at Marshalltown High School for presentations. They had storytelling and music there, and there's different grade level assemblies for each student. It was a really cool experience to show the different culture within Marshalltown to our students, and I think most students had a really good time and had a very good experience through maybe just learning more about their community, who's in it, in different parts of the world.
Last week, the Health and Careers had a silent auction, and for this fundraiser, the students created baskets to raise money for activities and career exploration opportunities. And our goal was to raise around $1,000, but we managed to raise well over that. And these were some of the baskets that were created for the fundraiser, and the students had really enjoyed creating them.
Was that at the high school or the Orpheum?
It was at the high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another one of the clubs at Marshalltown High School, the Interact Club, they were selling hot cocoa throughout the day, and most of the money was going to go towards either future community events or charity, and the goal is to raise around $5,000.
And then last week, MCSD also held a math competition. And during the competition, the students were given various math problems. And after each round, the difficulty of the question increased. And this was a really great activity for the students to think complex and solve problems. 2 teams from MHS placed first and third, and we were given medals. So this was a really fun activity. Any questions?
You said we. Did you compete in the math competition?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Did your team finish first or third?
First.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
A lot of great things happening.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got book study. We had chapters 13 through 15 this time.
Yes.
Well, something that stuck out to me was the short chapter on leveraging the power of encouragement. And it was just kind of coincidental, but as I was reading that, around the same time I had seen a social media post on a student from Ankeny High School who was being recognized at the board meeting because he had sat down next to a student just kind of randomly and struck up a conversation like earlier in the week, and had said something to the effect of, "Hey, I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow," to this kid. And little did he know that that student actually had a plan to commit suicide that day or that night, and because of that just simple kindness gesture that he had made, the kid didn't do that, didn't act on it, and then wound up getting help. And so it was the organization, counseling organization, that had provided him, that he had sought help from, who he had shared that he had this plan or she had this plan, and only because of those kind words that that student had said at that time, just randomly, did they choose not to act on it, which was pretty powerful. So you never know how your words can impact people, good or bad.
They also talked about, I can't remember the name of the gal from the story, the business that she was doing and how she was learning, and just, that encouragement that her leader gave her to say, hey, someday you're going to be, a powerful, businesswoman. And how fast forward till now, it's Eric's mom that, went through that. And, so it's so true how that power of encouragement is powerful.
Anything you guys took away?
Okay. Well, in chapter 13, the first thing, the delegate, different responsibilities with the team, it reminded me of a camp I went to this summer, RILA, the Rotary Camp in Grinnell. In that, so in the chapter in that, the camp, it emphasizes the importance of like finding your strength and finding your weaknesses, and then, you know, so you have that, you know, that knowledge, now you have that knowledge, but what do you do with that? You delegate that with other people so you have the best possible system to achieve a task. And I mean, this just reminded me of Ryla and how we were doing that. We did like do a Shark Tank presentation that was mixed with like a great race. It was hectic and chaotic, but we all played to each other's strengths and weaknesses. And so like I was in charge of like planning and like doing things and making the presentation while other people were out like doing activities to get knowledge that we needed and stuff like that. So it just kind of reminded me of that experience and the importance of delegating team, like that type of thing. Yeah.
For me, I really like chapter 15 and how the chapter emphasizes adaptability. I love the idea that even when things get chaotic, we can still use our unique skills to turn challenges into opportunities, and it just shows how powerful it can be to make the most of what we have. Yeah.
Just in general, I like how he pulls a lot of different tools and books and resources that you kind of see in the business world or just in kind of in general, and he pulls a lot of those things together into kind of more of a summary of all of the information that's out there, right? Kind of all in one place.
I can't find where it says, but I remember reading it where it talked about it's something that we know, and it's you don't always take the time, you know, to mourn those losses, but also celebrate those wins, whether it's a project, you know, whether it's your strategic planning that you did, you know, for that year or that 6 months. And of course, we have to look back and say, okay, what went well, what didn't, you know, what worked, what didn't. And sometimes I catch myself that sometimes I do that, but not, you know, actually give myself that time. You know, I think I read that in a year, you're supposed to give yourself, you know, those 3 personal days to, not really personal, but those 3 days for you to really look at all of that. Not just, okay, I have 30 minutes, I'm going to, you know, what went well, what didn't, and then go to the next step. But actually really take those 3 days to fully look at it all and, you know, learn from what didn't and what you can do better. And also celebrate. You know, it's other thing that sometimes we look more at what didn't work well, but we don't celebrate those wins how we need to.
Anything else?
I thought it was interesting when he kind of shared his structure of how his life works, and kind of like what you were saying, Leah, where you could kind of see his profession coming through his life, like his frequency of how he does different things. One topic said, you know, if you start to like stray away from a certain relationship, implement one-on-ones. And I was like, oh, why wouldn't you have one-on-ones all the time on a frequency so then you don't, you're preventative? But he has a completely different role. You know, like he's a traveling speaker and an author. So I thought it was really interesting, like it kind of then rolls into the story about the young girl who was a basketball player. And she has terminal cancer and decides to go out in college, and then they move the game forward, and yeah, that was really touching. But just kind of leads you into live your life, you know, like live it for what makes sense and matches you. And you know, instead of being critical of, okay, what is he doing that I'm not doing, and then trying to blend those, like thinking through the lens of what works for him that could work for me, what works for me that maybe probably wouldn't work for him. I thought those were really strategically placed chapters. Yeah, the rock what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 16, 17, 18 for next time?
Sounds right. Yes.
Okay, so this one, it's actually kind of a Dave Stanfield and I thing, and it could have maybe been consent agenda. We've already renewed with Infinite Campus, and we're continuing on with business as usual, but the way that they store their data off-site, they're going to change storage facilities. And they just let us know, hey, there's a third-party vendor that is storing your data, but all of the terms and agreements still stand about how we treat privacy, and we have offsite redundancy. We're easily able to recreate and restore servers with your data. So all of it still stands. All of this is asking, it asked me or Dave to hit an acceptance, and we just don't like to sign agreements. So said we want Sean to. So we just didn't want to click the little button and hit agree without the board knowing that this is a change, but it's a change that's pretty typical and still falls within all of our cybersecurity awareness and mitigation.
Does anybody have any questions? Then is there a motion to approve the change in Infinite Campus Digital Repository to an external storage provider as presented?
So moved. Second.
Morales, Stanley, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries 4-0.
I'll be right back. My lovely assistant has it. Okay, so this is just a continuation of what we talked about last board meeting. You were wonderful enough to approve the audio enhancement. Depending on how many, it would be IP-based equipment we needed to put into those buildings was how many data cables we need to run to each classroom. So this is a proposal for one data cable to be put into the location where there is IP-based equipment, if that makes sense. All of the audio enhancement runs on a network, so it all needs to be able to go back to a switch that can power that equipment. So this is just an infrastructure upgrade to work with audio enhancement.
Any questions?
Did we have this included in part of our budget for the bond? We were aware and, okay.
Yes.
If there are no other questions, is there a motion to approve the quotes from NAI Structured Cabling Systems in the amount of $81,130 as presented?
So moved. Second.
Faltus Stanley, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is the first step of a formal process that some of you will recall we've seen before with our previous construction projects. So when we have these construction projects, there's a couple different resolutions that will come through. The first one is to tentatively approve plan specs, form of contract, and estimated cost for the project. This first resolution also sets a public hearing for the project as well. So we're just kind of following the guidance of our attorney here on this. So in the resolution, you'll see the resolution language we've had formal or tentatively approving these plans and specs, setting a public hearing date for March 24th, for our March 24th meeting. The other part that this resolution does is, as we've worked with Boyd Jones and Clapsaddle Garber with this project, the plan is for bid documents to be ready to go out this week. And then bids will be due back March 19th. And we'll look to, and Dr. Sheedy can probably speak to this a little bit more. We're hoping to have the formal award of contract at the March 24th meeting as well, but depending on the turnaround time of looking at the bids when they come in, we might have to schedule a special meeting for that. The other document you see in the agenda tonight is the cost estimates that were shared by Boyd Jones with the Facilities and Finance Committees back on January 30th. Right now, we're looking at roughly $8.75 million for that project, a little bit higher than the original estimates that we had during the project. But on that document, you'll also see there's some other funding that's going to be available to offset those costs. What's not within this document is, as Amy has presented to you with the audiovisual enhancement projects at this meeting tonight, as well as the last meeting, there's some cost savings there from our original budget that we had. I think roughly about $1.5 million less there with that project. So taking that into consideration as well gets us closer to where our original budget estimates were. But tonight is the resolution to tentatively accept the plan specs and estimate of cost. That's not to say that it won't change or that you guys can't approve or deny a bid that comes in when those do come in March. This is just a first formality in setting that public hearing for the project. So, did I miss anything, Theron, with that?
Again, some of the items that were unforeseen that have impacted the escalation in cost. One is the fact that Franklin Field's in a floodplain, so there's significant amount of infill that's going to have to be brought in to raise to meet the DNR requirements there. Another thing is shared expense with the city on a major sewer line that runs through Franklin Field as well. In order to meet city code requirements as far as parking, there's plans to include some parking on site, but then some additional parking that would be an extension of the Franklin Elementary staff parking lot as well. So many of those things will probably be bid as alternates, so we can choose to accept them or not. And probably one of the bigger things too was the decision once we found out that by code we had to have so many public restrooms for males and females. What was a bleacher system turned into a grandstand, or basically a storage concession building with public restrooms, which significantly increased the cost too. But as Randy had mentioned, we're confident with different funding sources that we have that can go towards this, that the increased cost of this project will not have a negative impact on the overall Miller project that we will be embarking on a year later.
So the negative on here on page 4, that's what's going to be offset with the additional funding that will be used to pay for this one. On page 4, the cost adjustments.
Yeah, essentially, yes. If you look at page 5, that's kind of a cleaner breakout of what you see on page 4.
With the budget for this basically increase close to doubling, like 40% higher than it was when we originally went and did the bond into that budgeting cycle. Are there any thoughts of waiting to do this until after the Miller project's been completed? Just because that is our primary focus for the bond?
Well, I'd say the answer is no, in terms of we're planning to move forward with taking it out to bid. We can always put the brakes on it if those bids don't come in favorably. But again, we believe that the excess costs or the additional costs, if they're not offset by other funding sources, like for example, our intent was always to use Pearl funding for the playground part of the project, which was significantly enhanced as well. But that shows up as an overall part of the cost of this Franklin Field project. But we've, as long as the bids come in, because if we wait on it, it's not going to be any cheaper 3 or 4 years from now. And there's really not a lot of latitude within the project itself. There's not like a lot of bells and whistles to this project. In fact, it's kind of a watered down version of what we did at the high school. The track isn't of the same quality. The turf is probably similar quality, but if you reduce the quality of the turf that you're seeking, you're going to be replacing it sooner, so you don't really gain anything there. And I think overall the infrastructure improvements that are going to be made will be huge for us in the long term compared to what, like the Franklin facility has had. But again, if we're uncomfortable when those bids come in, we can then step back from that if we so choose.
Other questions or comments? Then is there a motion to approve the resolution tentatively approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated total cost for the Franklin Field project as presented?
So moved. Second.
Faltis Morales, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
Motion carries 3-1.
The other one on the right. The freeze? No, the budget presentation. There was a. Yeah. No, the right, other one.
The other budget.
Where's your assistant at? Take it away. All right. I am back again to talk about the budget for the upcoming fiscal year tonight. So tonight's presentation will be focused on 4 high-level items. First one being an update on our state supplemental aid. And then the 2 bigger pieces will be the instructional support levy, as well as the first public hearing on the property tax statements that will be going out next month, and then just a recap of our timeline review. So next slide. As of yet, SSA still has not been set. The Senate did put out Senate File 167, which set SSA at 2%. That does match what the governor recommended during her state address in January. Late last week, the House put out their own bill, House File 319, which recommended an SSA of 2.25%. The House File bill also included several other provisions within that bill. The most notable one was an additional supplement of $22.5 million to districts. Within that $22.5 million provision is for all Iowa districts and would be allocated on a per pupil basis. It would be considered miscellaneous income and would be to be used for any general fund purpose, but it would also be one-time money. So more to come on that as the House and the Senate debate that. But as you can see there, with our enrollment increase this last fall, SSA at 2% would be just a little over $1 million at 2.54% new money for us. 2.25 would be roughly just under 1.2 million at 2.78%. So either way, it's good for us, but it'd be nice to get that 2.25. So. Instructional support levy, I touched on this at the last meeting. So it's a levy that we utilize that's authorized by Iowa Code. It is used for any general fund purpose. It can be funded either through all property tax or a combination of property tax and income surtax. We do the mechanism where we fund through a combination of property tax and income surtax. Our ISL doesn't expire until the end of next fiscal year, but as we've talked about, we want to start that process now. It can be imposed through board resolution, which is good every 5 years, or a public vote, which is good for 10 years. Historically, we have done the board resolution. However, even with the board resolution that's passed, the public can petition that. So we want to start that now in the event that if we do get petitioned, we would have 3 potential election dates in the 25-26 year to where we could take that to the public to vote to be renewed. Those election dates for next year would be September 9th, 2025, November 4th, 2025, and March 3rd, 2026. So if we were to need to take it to vote, we would have time within that election cycle to get it approved before the 26-27 fiscal year budget. It's fun this time of year when you're working in 3 or 4 different fiscal years. So on this next slide, I won't dive. This is kind of the data I pulled for the current fiscal year that we're in for our district as well as districts that are surrounding us or close to us. In that chart, you can see the property tax levy rate for each of those districts, as well as the income surtax rate if they are levying an income surtax, and the percentage of their ISL that's funded there. But on the next slide, I think this is a little bit more telling. Can't really read it. So on that top chart, on that ISL property tax levy rate, you can see Marshalltown on the very far left is the biggest, highest property tax rate in comparison to those other districts. And then on the bottom, you can see the income surtax rates that are levied. The correlation is that the lower the income surtax rate, the higher the property tax rate. So it's funded the same. It's just a matter of how districts choose to spread out, or the amount that's calculated and generated to be collected calculates the same. It's up to districts how much they want to pull from property taxes versus how much they want to pull from income surtax. So districts do have the discretion to determine how much income surtax to levy. Lawfully, you can do up to 20% or at a minimum of 1%. We currently do the 1%, as you saw on that previous slide, compared to some of the other districts that are doing 7, 8, 9% around us. Next chart. Here you can see the blue bar is the unadjusted instructional support program. So within the aid and levy, that school funding formula each year, it calculates the total instructional support program that a district generates. There is a state aid portion within that calculation, which is part of that blue bar that you see there. Unfortunately, the state has chosen not to fund their portion since fiscal year 2012. So that red portion is the actual money that we're receiving. So that's the property tax and income surtax that the district levies. The difference between the blue and the red bars is the state unfunded portion. So since from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 25, for Marshalltown school districts, that's been just under $14.2 million that we have not received from the state for our instructional support levy, which again can be used for any general fund purpose. So just something to keep in mind there. It's usually an appropriations bill that they take out in the end of their session each year. The next slide, that's just the numbers behind the chart I just showed. I'm not going to dive into that. That's there for your information if you want it later on. On the next slide, you'll just see our instructional support levy. So again, the red bar has been our total overall tax levy rate over the last several years. And then the blue bar is the instructional support portion of that. So you can see how our instructional support levy property tax is compared has been in comparison to our overall tax levy rate. And then that black line is just that just shows the percentage of that instructional support levy tax. So back in FY19, our instructional support levy was roughly 11.1% of our total tax rate. And then for this upcoming year, we're projecting that to go to 5.75% on the property tax piece of it. The next slide, you'll see again, the blue bar is that adjusted instructional support. So it's kind of a little bit backwards. So the blue bar on this slide was the red bar on the slide a couple slides ago. I probably should have coordinated my colors better, but the blue slide is what the total instructional support levy tax dollars that we get. The red bar has been the property tax funded portion of that, and then the green bar has been the income surtax. So Marshalltown didn't implement the income surtax until fiscal year 2022. And so you can see the correlation the last few years there. The black bar is the representation of what or the black line is the income surtax percentage that we've done the last several years. So in FY22, we started out at 2%, and then we've dropped it back down to 1% for the last few years. We are recommending an increase to the 4% for next year. Because again, by increasing that income surtax, spreading some of the collection out to the income taxpayers, it does lower the property tax. And also with the recent changes in Iowa going to a flat income tax, this felt like an opportune time to where we could raise that income surtax and folks on their income tax returns wouldn't feel it as much because it's essentially offsetting with the income tax decrease that most people are seeing in the state. And the next slide, again, that's just the actual numbers and data behind that for anybody that's interested. So I'll pause there for a minute because that's the end of the income surtax. I guess if anyone has any questions, particularly on that piece before I move on.
So if you went to 4%, you'd go to 4% next
For
tax
25,
year,
20,
right?
yeah, for 25, 27. Or, yeah, oh, you're talking on
I'm talking like an income tax
on the,
payer
yes, it'd be on the,
would pay that on their 2025
Yes,
tax
yes,
return? Would be
2000.
when that
Yeah,
4%
so-
would go into effect?
yep.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Next slide, just a reminder on the bond financing. I covered this a little bit at the last meeting. We will be planning to issue $30 million in save revenue bonds this upcoming spring for the first phase of projects. GEO bonds, our first series issue will be in spring of 2026. Currently, we're estimating doing a $35 million issue at that time, but as plan design continues on Miller and we continue to monitor the market and work with our financial advisors, that number may change or may not change, but that's the early estimation so far. We are also looking to pre-levy bonds for this upcoming year instead of waiting until next year. This is going to allow us to save interest, and which means also having additional dollars for the project. So kind of tying into the discussion from earlier, right now we're estimating about an additional $1.5 million in project dollars to be available. So that might also help with some of the Franklin Field costs there, or have more funds for Miller, depending on how things shake out with bids. Also estimated to pay the bonds off early. With this current pre-levy, we're estimating being able to pay off the 20-year bond at least 3 years early, if not more. So with the income surtax that we talked about earlier with the ISL, as well as with this pre-levying, we are still looking at an estimated tax rate growth of $1.23. Our original estimates that we shared with voters with the bond passage was $1.28. So we're still coming in under what we originally told folks last fall. So now the next few minutes I'll spend talking about the first of 2 public hearings that we're required to have with the certified budget process. So this was new last year. And so folks got property tax hearing statements in the mail. And so districts were required to hold a separate public hearing, separate meeting related to those property tax statements that go out to folks. This year, districts have to submit the info to the county auditors by March 5th. Last year was March 15th that we had to submit. Amy, you want to go down a slide? So that's a tighter turnaround than what it was last year. County auditor will then mail statements out, and we can't have the first public hearing until at least March 20th. I believe county auditors have to have the statements mailed out by March 15th. So usually they want to give 3 to 5 days after the statements go out before districts can start holding the public hearings on those statements. With those statements, they are still required to have statutory notices of when they have to be published within the newspaper. We also have to publish the information from the property tax statement on our website as well as our social media pages. That was written into the law last year. It does set the maximum amount of property tax dollars that we can levy, not necessarily the rate. So there's still things that can happen at the state level that may adjust the rate up or down a couple cents, but as far as the property tax dollars levied, that is the max that will be on the property tax statement. So we do build a little bit of a cushion in there because we want to be able to come down, because legally, if there's a change that needs to be made, you can't raise the tax dollar amount, you can only lower it. So what will be on the statement will be slightly higher than what will actually end up being levied at the end of the day, most likely. The next slide, hard to see, that's just an example of what the property tax statement will look like when it goes out. So there's a section for the school, as well as a section for the county, and as well as a section for the city that people will see on their statements. But on the next slide is kind of a little bit more of a drill down. On that tax statement, you'll see what the current property tax dollars and current property tax rate is for the current year. You'll also see what's being proposed for next year. And then you'll also see the effective rate, and that tends to be slightly confusing for folks because it's taking the current property tax and dividing it by the upcoming budget year valuations. So I think the analogy that I used last year was taking the total amount of three-pointers that Caitlin Clark makes this season and dividing it by the number of attempts that she takes next season. So it's kind of weird math, and I think it's trying to give folks an idea of taking next year's potential tax rate and putting it into today's dollars, but it tends to be a little confusing for folks. But you know, I'll get to the point here, I guess, in a minute as to what folks should look for on that statement. But on the next slide, you'll see there's also, if there's an increase that's occurring, we are required to put a short explanation onto that statement as to why it is. For our district, the increase will be due to a couple of factors, mainly the pre-levy that we'll be putting in place this year in relation to the bond vote that was approved this past November. And also, as you'll recall, this upcoming year is the first year that we'll see the increase in the voted PEPAL going into effect. That did increase from 64 cents to $1.34, but then we're also making adjustments on our management fund levy, as well as that instructional support surtax to, again, get to a total increase of $1.23, when originally we had estimated $1.28.
Did you get a lot of calls from people last year when those property statements went out?
I got zero.
Or hearing statements?
Yeah, I got zero. I'm not saying that I won't this year, and I'm more than happy to take any calls that do come in, but yeah, I don't know. At least last year, no one questioned it. Not to say that they won't this year, but yeah.
I was just
No,
curious.
last year I didn't get any, so. The other piece on the statement that will probably be a little misleading to folks is that it will also give an example of a statement that shows the impact on a $100,000 residential or commercial property. With that example, it doesn't assume any credits like homestead, military, or elderly. And why that's confusing is if you go to the next slide. On that notice, the assessment automatically increases by 10%. The problem with that is that it's a non-assessment year. So most assessments didn't go up. Assessments are done in odd numbered years. So we're in an even number year where, because it's last year's assessments that are being used, the 2024. So it's going to automatically put in that 10% increase, even though there's not technically a 10% increase. So at a non-assessment year, the power of the rollback goes down and it increases your taxable value. So the notice shows a double whammy of increasing your assessment and reducing the power of the rollback, which typically doesn't happen. So, and the reason why that 10% can be a little misleading is if you go to the next slide, basically, if there was a true 10% year over year increase, how that would look is that, for example, for 30 years, the assessed value factor would be 17.45. So on that $100,000 home, after 30 years, it would have an assessed value of almost 1.75 million, which is not realistic. I don't know if anybody's home has gone up to over $1 million in the last 30 years. If it has, I'd like to talk to you afterwards. But yeah, that's kind of the problem with some of the math there. So on this slide, you'll see what we did was we worked with some folks at the Iowa School Finance Information Bureau, and they put together this tool for districts to use. So on the top box there, you'll see with our property tax rate from the 24-25 year to what we're currently proposing for the FY26. On that $100,000 home example, it would show a 22% increase. In reality, what it is about a 10.9% increase. Because again, the comparison in the Department of Management budget system for taxpayers, it mandates that 10% increase, which again, it's a non-assessment year. So that typically wouldn't happen. So that's kind of the rough example there. I would tell folks that as they're looking at their property tax statement to compare the current year 1475 levy rate to the 1598 that we're proposing for next year, and take that difference, so that $1.23, and do the same calculation that we told folks during the bond vote to figure that out. So for a $100,000 home, the taxes will increase $74 or $6.17 a month. Next slide, the proposed property tax notice. So this is what we have to publish on our website and on our social media. So it's similar to the summary statement that will go out. It's just a longer version of the statement with more detail, and it breaks it down by each individual levy. So you'll see on the next slide an example of that. So you'll see the breakdown by, I know that's hard to read, but that shows the breakdown by our general fund, the instructional support levy, management, PEPL, both regular and voted, Pearl, debt service, et cetera. So you can kind of see that breakdown there. I tell folks, usually look at the column on the far left compared to the column on the far right. Don't pay too much attention to the column in the middle, because that's where that misleading math is, and just do the comparisons from left to right. And usually you're okay. And if you have any questions, just to call me and I can walk through it. So, next slide, just takeaways. Again, total property tax dollars and tax rates are still estimates. There's still moving pieces such as SSA, obviously at the state level, that can result in changes, but we're fairly comfortable right now with where things stand. Unfortunately, the statutory deadlines that we have in place, which is a tighter turnaround this year, it does require us to make some big estimates with not all of the info available. So we do have a conservative estimate on that property tax statement that will allow us to back down the total tax dollars levy if needed. But again, that I think the point I would like to hammer home is that 1598, that increase of $1.23, which again is less than what we had estimated back in the fall, and I don't see that going up at this point in time with the information that we have available. So, and then on the last two slides, that's just from the last meeting. Again, just some updated reminders of what's coming up at the next couple of meetings. So March 3rd, we'll set that first public hearing, and we'll also look at doing the resolution signaling our intent to continue our ISL, as well as the resolution to pre-levy on the debt service fund. March 24th is when we'll have the first public hearing on the property tax statements. I'll give you guys a break at the next meeting from having to listen to me present, and we'll do another presentation at the March 24th meeting where I'll have pretty much a more finalized budget in place, as well as show how that budget fits into our financial forecasting projections. And then at that meeting, again, we'll adopt some resolutions, set the date for the second public hearing, adopt a resolution for the sale of our revenue bonds. So we'll have a special meeting for that on April 8th. April 7th will be our second public hearing, and we'll look to adopt the budget. And again, April 8th, we'll get everything submitted well ahead of the April 30th deadline, and have a special board meeting to start the construction revenue bonds. So that is all I have for this evening.
Questions for Randy?
No, we covered it very well.
Thanks for the explanation and everything.
I think you may get some calls when that statement goes out. It says you're going to get a 20%
Mm-hmm.
increase.
Yeah.
Probably.
That's going to be. You explain it very well, though. I mean,
Yeah.
like talking
can
people
understand.
through
Right.
this very complicated math.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Right on time.
Still up. So the next item on the agenda is our engagement letter to utilize Allers and Cooney as our bond disclosure counsel related to the upcoming revenue bonds. We have used Allers for all of our previous bond issuances the last several years, so no reason to sway from them. They are our district legal counsel as well, and they have been easy and great to work with. So just the formality of approving them as our bond counsel moving forward.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the engagement agreement with Allers and Cooney to serve as bond and disclosure counsel for the upcoming sales tax revenue bond issue as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Morales, Faltus, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Policies. I noticed that both Liz,
Liz
and Zach
are gone, so
took the night off.
I will cover these. So 905.1R1 application for use and approval has a lot of policy number changes for regulations, exhibits, and some language changes in terms of in addition to the building principles. When there's a facility manager, like for the Roundhouse with activities, or the auditorium with the auditorium manager, or the Orpheum, that they would reach out there. So this will come back for a first reading at the next meeting. And then 905.1R2, community use of school district buildings, sites, and equipment fees schedule. We added Franklin Field to this list. So that will come back at the next meeting. 905.1R3, community use of school district facilities and equipment regulation. That would be marked as reviewed. 905.01E1, use of school facilities application form. That would be marked as reviewed. No changes are being recommended. 905.01E2, use of school facilities indemnity and liability insurance agreement. No changes are being recommended there. Mark is reviewed. And then 905.01E3, use of school facilities rental contract. Again, Franklin Field's been added to that effective 2026, so that would come back for first reading.
Any questions? So then 905.1R1 and R2 will come back, as well as E3.
Yeah.
Do I have that right? The rest is to be marked as reviewed. Okay. Abby, you got any communications for us?
Not tonight.
Okay, maybe someday. Sarah gets to review policies for the March 3rd meeting.
So I don't have to come, is that?
That seems to be the way it's going.
Just pass it.
Oh, all right, let's hear it.
KCCI story tomorrow at 6 p.m. Our girls wrestling programs, both on the middle school side and high school side, will be featured.
Okay,
If you want to do a little watch party with your families.
tune in, KCCI,
Yeah.
6 p.m.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Fisher Elementary will be here to present. I hope that they don't continue the trend of recent school presentations where the principal retires right before they come in.
We have had a couple of those.
And March, we'll meet in March 3rd and then not till the 24th because of spring break.
So there, the Fisher School visit is Wednesday the 26th, February 26th at 9:30.
Thank you.
This is after the, oh no, before the, okay, gotcha. 26th.
Any committee reports?
I missed the SIAC.
We reviewed the strategic plan. Theron kind of introduced the different pillars, and then we looked specifically at the student achievement, and I pulled up the Iowa School performance profiles and just kind of shared how anyone can access those and how it connects to the student achievement goal of all buildings being commendable or higher. And then Theron gave an update on Miller Middle School and the bond. And we talked about attendance, same data that Ellie shared with you. We discussed there because she did her initial presentation with you. She did the same thing with SIAC, so we looped back around on that. And then I think I had one more thing. Do you remember?
I think that was a preponderance of.
It was most of it. I can't remember. Oh, the attendance center plan. So every building's attendance center plan was taped on the wall, and I had a gallery walk prepared for it. And actually, our discussion around the strategic plan took quite a bit longer than we had thought. So I sent them the actual plans home with the SIAC committee, and they have access to them digitally too.
Thank you, Shauna.
Yep.
Any items for a future board meeting agenda? Okay. What have we done this evening to improve education for the students in Marshalltown?
Well, there's another great opportunity for kids to participate in essentially a registered apprenticeship type program that would give them credentials and make them career ready for childcare.
I liked hearing about the letters and all that training. I think, Leah, your comment was spot on, right? Just like, this is a lot of work, and they're doing it on their own time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It really shows the commitment of the teachers.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The passion.
Anything else?
Well, and then hearing about, kind of to your point, Theron, with the new career path, I guess, and the funding that we're receiving, also with MLA and their new certifications that they're working on their students with as well. Just another opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The child care work experience program.
Yeah, so, and then the MLA one was the Southwest Airlines, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's the end of the open portion of tonight's meeting, so many of you are now free to leave. In fact, you have to leave.